Thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Michael, for inviting myself and Sharon. I'm Steve Greene, and along with Sharon Cohen, we're financial advisors with Merrill Lynch right here in Highland Park. And we're grateful for an opportunity just to spend a few minutes talking about some financial stuff. So as we all experienced through this past spring, lots of turmoil, lots of disruption. Markets were going crazy. People were fearful about their health, and businesses were shut down, locked down. And now we're starting to reopen, and life is slowly, hopefully getting back to a sense of normalcy. So we thought this was a good time just to talk about a couple of things in the financial sense that we think are relevant to life going forward. I'm going to speak for a few minutes about organizing one's financial life. Sharon's going to talk about risks in the way we manage our money, risks in the way we think about money, that maybe some risks that people haven't even thought about. So we'll get right to it. And Michael, just to be clear, I can share a screen? Okay. So for some reason, I'm not able to share, but no big deal. We'll post it later. So I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about organizing your financial life. So coming through this episode of craziness and disruption, it's always a good time to think about how can we prepare for our future in a way that, from a financial perspective, in a way that's organized. And what I mean about organizing our financial lives is we all pay bills, we all have various documents from statements from different investment companies and this bank statements, etc. But rarely do we take time to set on paper where everything is in the event that something untoward happens to us. And so when I work with clients all the time, especially retirees, it's very important to them and to me as their advisor to make sure that we have in one document where everything is if somebody gets hit by a bus. So I view the pandemic as the health equivalent of getting hit by a bus. And what I'm talking about is having a place where if something were to happen to someone, this surviving spouse or family member would know where to go to find information, okay? What sort of information am I talking about? So we have an actual document that we use with clients to help them document who the contact people are and where things can be found. You know, it's amazing when, not to get maudlin, but when somebody passes, there's obviously tremendous grief, and it's a very heightened emotional state. And the last thing you want to be doing at that juncture is searching around for what your spouse or your decedent, where they kept papers, where they had stuff. It's a very emotionally fraught time. But if you prepare in advance with this document that I'm about to describe, it just makes everything that much more cogent and simple, and not fraught with emotion. So there are 5 categories of things that we suggest people document in this one document. So an estate plan, estate documents. And what do I mean by estate documents? There are what I call the core 4 documents every person should have: a will, a trust agreement. I'll talk more about that in a minute. A power of attorney for property, and a power of attorney for healthcare. When I refer to the power of attorney for property, I'm talking about real property as well as financial property. So bank accounts, investment accounts, etc. Those 4 should protect you if something were to happen, and put you in a position where there's a clear plan as to how your estate is disposed. A trust agreement, many people think, is only for rich people and a way to avoid taxes. It actually has nothing to do with that in most cases. It's simply an expression of how you wish your assets to be disposed when you're no longer here. Because otherwise, chances are the state is going to go through a probate process, which nobody wants to go through. Those are the sort of the core four. So when I talk about an estate plan or estate documents, I'm really referring mostly to those documents and where they can be found. So some people have copies in their home. Some people keep copies in a safe deposit box. Some people have a copy with their lawyer. So those are all sort of acceptable places to store copies of those. The next category is our bank accounts, things like savings accounts, checking accounts. So you want to make sure you have a clear place to find for somebody where they can find information about those accounts. Most of our lives are going from a physical document state to a digital state. So in many cases, we've gone entirely virtual in our financial lives, right? Most of us do our banking with either an iPhone app or online. So in that case, you want to make sure you document your internet site and password. Now, I'm going to talk later briefly about how to protect all that information so that nobody can hack it. The third category is investment accounts. So we have bank accounts, now we have investment accounts, same drill, you know, who the contact person is or the website, and then how to access it. Fourth would be retirement, things like IRAs, 401ks, those should be clearly stated where they can be found. And fifth is credit and lending. So if we have mortgages or car loans or student loans or any other forms of borrowing, again, just documenting who the point person is or the website and the passcode. Now, when I say passcode, these are obviously sensitive access information. So normally I would tell somebody in this one document where we're putting all this information to password protect that document. So you might store it on your computer, but in order to access it, you have to give somebody a code to enter it. So we're passcode protecting all this valuable information. And then the last category would be if you own a small business like Brian. So in that case, you might have incorporation documents or other business documents. Again, those are documents that should be contact person and where they can be found. So the point of this exercise is simply to simplify your life, have everything in one place so that even while you're living, everything, you know where to find it. And when you're not here, your next of kin or spouse similarly can know where to find things. So where to store all this information, who to give this document to. Couple of thoughts. Obviously, you want to leave one for your spouse, maybe a copy with your executor or your estate attorney. And always make sure that it's you know, like in a PDF format or in a digital format. I generally advise against keeping something like this in a physical paper format. You don't want it getting in the wrong hands. At Merrill Lynch, we actually have an encrypted website. It's called mymerrill.com. All of our clients, it's a secure website where they can upload all of their documents that I've just discussed. And it gets encrypted in sort of like a lockbox. So it's a terrific tool. I think a lot of companies have something like this now. So it's, again, another place to store this. So why does all this matter? I want to tell a very brief story to conclude. A couple of years ago, I had a client. He was recently widowed. He had 3 adult children. And he was starting to get early onset, or he was starting to get early signs of dementia. So I had worked with him for a number of years, and I saw this coming, and his children also noticed he was starting to exhibit signs of dementia. So I had worked with him, make sure he had his estate plan in place, so everything was all set. And then he passed away. And when he passed away, his children discovered that they had no idea what assets he had. He had never spoken with them about his estate or any financial topics at all. And it took 6 months going through his house to find all of his financial information. believe it or not, he had things like CDs stored in kitchen drawers, like a certificate of deposit notice stored in kitchen drawers. He had like bank statements in bedroom drawers. Stuff was everywhere, and it was a disaster. It took 6 months to basically collect all this information. He ended up being worth $25 million. And in one case, he had a CD document. His children called the bank where he had the CD, and they discovered he actually had an ownership stake in the bank because he was one of the original founders and depositors at the bank. So again, another asset that nobody knew about that was just discovered through pure happenstance. So this is why it's so important to document where everything is and what you own, so that you don't have to go through a situation like that for your survivors or next of kin or spouse or whoever. So we'll post the document we use with clients. We'll attach it to this, this recording and make it available. And always encourage anybody to reach out to me if I can be helpful to them in organizing their lives. And with that, I want to turn it over to Sharon to talk about risk.
Hello, thank you so much. I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. Hold on. Oh, good, it's on here. So thank you for letting Steve and myself speak today. And actually, believe it or not, risk is one of my favorite topics because I think it's a topic that is so misunderstood. And I realized just exactly how misunderstood it was when I received a certificate in longevity through Merrill and University of Southern California Davis School of Gerontology. Because many people just define risk as, oh no, I got my statement, it's up, it's down, what's happening on CNBC, it's information overload everywhere you go. People are talking about the markets. Oh, did you see what happened today? And that's really, I think when people think about risk, that is the main thing they are thinking about. But I look at risk in a very different way because while that's important, there's so many other things we need to think about, things that are going to happen to everybody's life regardless of what's happening on CNBC. I think most people hope to live a long time. If they have a family, they hope to be able to provide for their family. They hope to have nice things. They hope to be able to spend money, maybe send their kids to college, hope they don't get sick. So, we all different goals, but I think many of us have same common interest goals. So these are just some of the other types of risks that people, I find, don't usually consider when I speak with them, because usually the first thing people will say is, I can't take any risks. I don't want to have any risks. And I say, what type of risks are we talking about? I know they're talking about the ups and downs in the market, but I think it's important to also explore these. So the first risk is the longevity risk. And basically that is, how long are we going to live? If we think about it, and it says retirement because that's when we are older, if there is a 65-year-old married couple, there is a 50% chance that one of the two of them are going to live to age 92, a 25% chance to age 97, and a 10% chance that somebody's going to live to 100. So that's important, I think, for people to keep in mind, because if you're kind of planning for just a 1 or 2 years, oh my goodness, I want my accounts to be up higher at the end of the year, I can't take risks because of the ups and downs. We need to think a little bit more strategically of, will we have money that will last really as long as we last, especially if, there's statistically a very good chance that we are going to live a very long time. The next type of risk is at some point in time, we won't be working and we're going to need to use the money that we have saved through the years. And how much of that can we take out and still have that money last to age 90, 95, 100, somewhere in that area? Most people have no idea. 20% of people had no idea, I don't know, and about 40% completely overestimated. And I would, the recommended rate, the sustainable rate, the rate that money will last throughout life is approximately, general rule of thumb, 4 to 5%. That is the amount that you can take out of your savings and reasonably expect it to last a lifetime. Not a universal truth. Lots of things can affect that number, such as, are you male or female? Females usually live longer than males. How your family history, what is, how long are people usually living in your family? What are the genetics? What's inflation doing? Marital status. So there's other things to think about, but 4 or 5% is a general rule of thumb. And I think it's important because sometimes people say, well, gosh, I have, $100,000. I'm going to take 10,000 out of it each year and use it. Well, that is going to be gone in 10 years. If you take a much lesser amount, it will, 5%, that's going to last 20 years. At age 65, that alone will last you right there till age 85 versus age 75. So, we have to kind of think about how quickly we're going to use the money that we have. We also need to think about inflation. People don't think of inflation as a risk, but that's another risk that's very, this is on spending rates, hold on. Inflation, from the last 20 years, 19 years, 2010 to 2019, this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We can see that inflation pretty much is about 1.76%, not really a lot, less than 2%. Most people think, hey, that's manageable when they hear that number. What they don't know is that when we get older, we are more likely to need medical care, more prescription drugs, more hospital services, medical services, and that is running much higher than that 1.76%. That's somewhere between the 3 and 5% area. So the longer we live, while inflation may not be high for things such as, going to the grocery store, going out to eat or buying milk, the healthcare, the things that as older people age, they're tending to use more of. So that's something we need to think about. And another risk, is deals with market volatility and market performance. If we're saving money, this chart kind of shows it doesn't matter if the first years of when you're saving, we're accumulating, we're not taking money out. What happens doesn't matter, meaning this is a little chart, 10 years, and the only difference between client 1 and client 2 in these two charts is the returns are reversed. What's year 1 for client 1 is year 10 for client 2, and all the way down. At the end of the day, we get to the exact same ending point. And I actually did the math because I wanted to verify this to be true for myself when I see charts like this, and I've done the math on this numerous times. When we're saving, doesn't matter, but when we are retired, when we are no longer putting money into our accounts, when we are using what we have accumulated to fund our life, the order certainly matters. And this is something we have zero control over. We don't know what's going to happen. So this is a little bit scary because we don't know if when we start to take our money out, are we going to be in the positive years or the negative years for the first few years? And how that money, the return of that money will have a huge impact on our savings and the quality of life that we're going to have, because it is going to have a huge impact on the amount of money we have. So there's ways to manage to minimize having this impact of withdrawals. So there's ways that we can go and we can manage both of these. And the overlaying risk on a lot of these types of things is our health. If we are healthy, we may live a really long time. If we are unhealthy, we may die way too soon and have to take care of our family because they're no longer going to have us and the support of us and our income and our resources. Or we could get sick, become disabled, and all three of those are risks that need to be addressed. So that health is that overlaying risk, kind of that bonus extra risk that we all have, because we don't really, we can do things to improve our health, but we really, we're dealt the cards that we have. So, if we live a really long time, we need to make sure that we are addressing risk in the right way, not so concerned of what's going to happen next week or tomorrow, even though it's very difficult to see past that when things are not going well. But we really need to step back and look at this And that's where Steve and myself can come in to help people understand this, navigate through this, and understand, some money can have absolutely no market risk. Other money that's long-term money that's going to last into our 90s needs to have risk in order to stay above inflation and be there for us in the future. And Steve and I are always happy to talk with anybody to discuss any personal situation that somebody might have an interest in discussing. And of course, we keep everything very confidential. We don't discuss anything we discuss with anybody to anybody else. So thank you so much. We hope you have found this useful. It's very uncertain times, and we can certainly be there to be that kind of calming voice, that sounding board, kind of helping people understand what they're seeing, because you turn on, like I pick on CNBC a lot, but you turn that on, you have 3 people and 5 opinions. So they're just speaking to the masses, and we'll speak to you. I'm done.
Sharon and Steve, that was wonderful. Thank you so much for talking about, the items in the core document. I have a question related to that. What really drives people's inability to pull this kind of thing together? It's like, I don't know whether it's, falls to the bottom of the to-do list or whatever. It seems so logical.
So a lot of people, so it's how to put this charitably. A lot of business owners think they're never going to die. That's sort of the short of it. But also, most of us are procrastinators. We don't want to think about our mortality and how to prepare for something like that. So that's where I just try to bring in a little logic and compassion for their survivors. I'm more effective in framing it in the manner of, do you have any idea how this would impact your spouse and your children? So I'm trying to provide a little bit more of an emotional argument for why it's important to get it done. So that tends to be a little bit more effective. But the bottom line is, we're procrastinators. We don't want to think about death. And that's why in many cases it doesn't get done.
Mm-hmm. And I also think, I know I talk with clients about getting some of these documents prepared, not just getting them on the form so that people know where they are, but actually doing the documents. And as Steve said, people are kind of afraid to address their own mortality. And I also think people are not 100% certain, meaning, what if I have my brother as my beneficiary and I end up not liking my brother? Or, what if I what if I want to make a change? So they're kind of, there's a lot of reasons that people go through the processing of their minds of things that could stop them. Like, it may not be perfect, but it is much more perfect than the alternative. And any of these things can be changed. And that's the thing. It's not like it's in all cases, it's not irrevocable, that you can never make a change when something is done. So better to, have 3 people, if you have 3 children and that's who you want your money to go to have it go there. And then if something happens, make a change at some other point in time, but otherwise it's a lot worse. Thank you. So
thank you.
We are
Does
done.
anyone else have a question for Steve or Sharon?
Well, I just know, I'm a fairly young man in decent health, but like Steve mentioned, Ginny, you and I often will use the hit by a bus analogy. And
I do that all the time.
Our work at the chamber, not necessarily our personal lives, but if one of us were to be injured or something happened to us, what's the protocol we have for filling in the work, getting stuff done, finding passwords, finding information on how to run things. That's all very important to set up these kind of guidelines and systems.
I'll give you a real life example that just happened this spring. One of Sharon and I's colleagues had a client, I think the estate was 30 million or something. He got COVID and he died, and he had no estate plan. And
Wow.
our colleague had been pounding him for years to get his estate documents in place and have a sort of a process for disposing his estate. Never got it done, and then he got COVID.
Oh,
So,
how sad.
so that just hits home the point about why it's, we never know when that proverbial bus is going to hit us. So.
That's, I know, and I use that analogy all the time because all too often a business owner, I think, has everything in his or her head, and it's not down on paper, or it's not, easily accessible by someone else. So if, you do get hit by that bus, how do you find what you need to keep that business operational? That's important too, as well as your personal financial situation.
What I find is commonplace in most married couples is one of the two is responsible for all the financial stuff, and the second one has absolutely nothing to do. And so that's the problem. If the one who's in charge of the finances passes, the survivor is totally left in the lurch. So putting something like this in place is a way to help at least smooth the waters.
Yeah, that's really important. You're right.
So, well, if there are no more questions, I want to thank Ginny and Michael for giving us this opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And as Michael mentioned, we will have the recording up on the website. And if you, Sharon, if you want us to post the slides, we can do that as well. If you don't, that's fine. But
Okay.
we'd love to have that document, Steve. If you want to share that, we will include that to be accessible to people. And I may just write a little post about what you discussed today, just kind of a nice way to encourage people to listen to the recording. So,
Thank you.
Thanks so much, and hope everyone has a great day.
thank you
Thank
all.
you.
All right. Take care now.
Bye, Ryan, Katie,
Bye-bye.
Steve, Sharon.
Thank you.